The dust from the main street of Hachita, New Mexico, kicked up around Victoria Zimmerman's worn boots as she walked past the general store, her shoulders back, despite the whispers that followed her everywhere she went in the summer of 1882. She had learned long ago that people in this territory town had nothing better to do than talk, and her slender frame had been the subject of their gossip since the day she arrived 6 months earlier on the stage from Santa Fe. The women clucked their tongues and said she looked half-starved. The men laughed behind their hands and made jokes about how a strong wind might carry her clear to Texas. And the children stared with wide eyes as if she were some kind of curiosity in a traveling show. Victoria had grown used to it, though it never stopped hurting. She was 20 years old and had been thin her entire life, no matter how much she ate or how hard she worked. Her mother had been the same way, delicate-boned and slight, and Victoria had inherited that build along with her mother's dark hair and green eyes. After her parents died in a cholera outbreak back in Missouri, she had used what little money they left to start fresh out west, hoping to find work and a new life where nobody knew her history. But it seemed that cruelty followed her like a shadow, taking new forms in new places. She pushed open the door to the mercantile, the bell jingling overhead. Martha Perkins, the shopkeeper's wife, was behind the counter folding fabric. The woman's eyes swept over Victoria with barely concealed disdain. "Miss Zimmerman," Martha said coolly, "what can I do for you?" "I need some flour, beans, and coffee if you have it," Victoria said, keeping her voice steady. She had a small room above the seamstress shop where she worked, and she tried to keep her own supplies when she could afford it. Martha gathered the items with efficient movements, her lips pursed. "That will be $2.40. Victoria counted out the coins carefully, her meager wages from sewing barely covering her expenses. As she handed over the money, 2 other women entered the store, their voices carrying loudly. "Did you see that new rancher, Quinton Hayes?" One of them said, a blonde woman named Sarah Mitchell. "He bought the old Carson place, 500 acres of good grazing land." "I heard he is looking to hire help," her companion replied. "My husband said he was in the saloon last night, talking about needing someone to help with the books and correspondence. Apparently, he is looking for someone who can read and write well, keep accounts." Victoria's ears perked up at this. She was excellent with numbers and had a fine hand for writing, skills her father had insisted she learn. Ranch work would pay better than sewing, and she was desperate to save enough money to eventually buy a small piece of land of her own. "I wonder what kind of woman he will choose," Sarah said with a laugh. "Probably someone sturdy, not like some girls around here who look like they might snap in half." Martha Perkins giggled, and Victoria felt the familiar burn of humiliation in her cheeks. She gathered her purchases quickly and left the store, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to shed in public. That evening, as she sat in her small room mending a dress by lamplight, Victoria made a decision. She would go to the Hayes ranch tomorrow and ask about the position. The worst that could happen was that he would say no, and she was used to rejection. But if there was even a chance she could escape the suffocating confines of this town and the constant mockery, she had to try. The next morning dawned clear and hot, the kind of relentless heat that made the desert landscape shimmer. Victoria put on her best dress, a simple calico that was faded but clean, and braided her long, dark hair neatly. She borrowed a horse from the livery, promising old Mr. Henderson she would have it back by evening, and set out toward the Hayes ranch. The ride took nearly 2 hours, the sun beating down mercilessly. The land out here was harsh and beautiful, all scrub brush and red dirt, with distant mountains rising against the blue sky. Victoria had grown to love the raw openness of the territory, so different from the green hills of Missouri. Out here, it felt like a person could be anyone, do anything. Out here, the past did not have to matter. The Hayes Ranch came into view as she crested a small rise. It was a sprawling property with a sturdy adobe house, several outbuildings and corrals where horses moved restlessly in the heat. Cattle dotted the distant pastures, and she could see several ranch hands working near the barn. Her heart hammered as she approached, her courage threatening to desert her. A tall man emerged from the barn as she rode up, and Victoria knew immediately that this must be Quinton Hayes. He was in his mid-20s, broad-shouldered and sun-bronzed, with dark hair and eyes that were in striking shade of gray. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat pushed back on his head, and there was an air of capability about him that came from hard physical labor. "Can I help you, miss?" He called out, his voice deep and pleasant. Victoria dismounted, her legs slightly shaky from the long ride. "Mr. Hayes, my name is Victoria Zimmerman. I heard in town that you might be looking for someone to help with accounts and correspondence." Quinton walked closer and she saw his eyes take in her appearance. She braced herself for the usual reaction, the dismissal or the poorly concealed amusement, but his expression remained neutral, professional. "I am," he said. "Do you have experience with bookkeeping?" "Yes, sir. My father ran a freight business back in Missouri, and I kept his books for 3 years before he passed. I am good with figures and I write clearly. I can also read and speak a bit of Spanish, which might be useful in this territory." She saw something like approval flicker in his eyes. "That would be useful indeed. Most of my hands are Mexican and some only speak Spanish. Can you show me a sample of your handwriting?" Victoria had anticipated this and pulled a folded paper from her pocket. It was a letter she had written to a former neighbor, full of neat, even script. Quinton studied it carefully, then looked back at her. "This is fine work," he said. "The job would involve keeping track of cattle sales, supply purchases, and payroll for the hands. I also need someone to help with correspondence to buyers and the bank. It would be 5 days a week, and I can pay $20 a month plus meals." $20 a month was more than she made at the seamstress shop, and meals would help stretch her money further. Victoria felt a surge of hope. "That sounds very fair, Mr. Hayes. I would be grateful for the opportunity." "There's one thing," Quinton said, and his expression turned serious. "The work is not just sitting at a desk. Sometimes I will need help with other tasks around the ranch, things that require a strong back. Hauling supplies, helping move equipment, that sort of thing. It can be demanding." Victoria lifted her chin, recognizing the unspoken question. He was asking if she was physically capable of the work, if her slight build would be a hindrance. It was the same doubt she saw everywhere, and it stiffened her spine. "I am stronger than I look, Mr. Hayes," she said firmly. "I have never been afraid of hard work." Quinton studied her for a long moment, and Victoria met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away. Finally, he nodded. "I believe you," he said simply. "Can you start Monday?" The words were so unexpected that Victoria blinked. "You are giving me the job." "I am, unless you have changed your mind." "No, not at all. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Thank you so much." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Call me Quinn. Most people do. And I should warn you, Miss Zimmerman, I have high standards. I expect good work and honesty. Can you give me both?" "Yes," Victoria said without hesitation. "You will not regret this." "I will hold you to that," Quinn said. "Come at 7 on Monday morning. I will have everything ready for you." Victoria rode back to Hachita feeling lighter than she had in months. Someone had given her a chance, had looked past her appearance to what she could actually do. Quinn Hayes had not laughed at her or dismissed her. He had simply asked if she could do the work, and believed her when she said yes. That weekend passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Victoria gave notice at the seamstress shop, where Mrs. Porter accepted her resignation with barely concealed relief. The old woman had never been satisfied with anything Victoria did, constantly criticizing her stitches or her speed. It would be a relief to leave. Monday morning arrived hot and bright. Victoria rode out to the ranch with her stomach full of butterflies, determined to prove herself. Quinn met her at the house and led her to a small office off the main living area. It was simply furnished with a desk, chair, filing cabinet, and shelves lined with ledgers and papers. "This will be your workspace," Quinn said. "The previous owner kept records, but they are a mess. I need you to go through everything, organize it, and create a clear accounting system going forward. Can you handle that?" Victoria surveyed the chaos of papers and felt a spark of challenge. "Yes, I can." "Good. I will be working around the ranch, but if you need me, just ask one of the hands. Maria, the cook, will have lunch ready around noon. Help yourself to coffee anytime." He left her to it, and Victoria rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The records were indeed a disaster, with receipts mixed with contracts mixed with random notes. But she had always enjoyed bringing order to chaos, and she lost herself in the task. By midday, she had created a basic filing system and begun transcribing the scattered information into a new ledger. Maria, a plump Mexican woman with kind eyes, called her to lunch. In the kitchen, Victoria found Quinn and 3 of the ranch hands sitting around a large table. The men looked at her curiously, and one of them, a young Mexican man named Carlos, grinned. "So you are the new bookkeeper," he said in accented English. "Welcome to the Hayes Ranch." "Thank you," Victoria said, taking a seat. The meal was simple but delicious, beans and tortillas and roasted meat, and she ate gratefully. The men talked easily about the work, switching between English and Spanish, and Quinn translated occasionally when Victoria looked confused. She appreciated that he did not make a fuss about it, just included her naturally in the conversation. After lunch, Victoria returned to her work. The afternoon passed quickly, and by the time Quinn came to check on her progress at 5, she had made significant headway. "This is excellent," he said, studying the organized files and the neat ledger entries. "You work fast." "I enjoy it," Victoria admitted. "There is something satisfying about making sense of disorder." Quinn nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Most people would find this tedious." "Most people are not me." That earned her a genuine smile, one that transformed his usually serious face. "No, I suppose they are not. Come on, I will walk you to your horse." As they stepped outside, Victoria realized how tired she was. It had been a long day, but a good one. She felt useful, appreciated in a way she had not felt in a long time. "You did well today," Quinn said as she mounted her borrowed horse. "I am glad I hired you." "I am glad you gave me a chance," Victoria replied. "Most people do not." Something flickered in Quinn's eyes, an understanding that surprised her. "Most people are fools who judge by appearances. I learned a long time ago to judge by actions instead." The words stayed with Victoria during the ride back to town, warming her more than the late afternoon sun. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could belong. The first few weeks at the Hayes Ranch established a comfortable routine. Victoria arrived each morning at 7, worked through the accounts and correspondence, helped Maria with various tasks during the day, and headed home in the evening. The work was challenging but rewarding, and Quinn proved to be a fair and respectful employer. He never spoke down to her or treated her as inferior, which was a refreshing change from most men she had encountered. The ranch hands, too, grew to accept her. Carlos was friendly and talkative, often practicing his English with her. The older hands, Miguel and Tom, were more reserved but always polite. Even Maria, who had been standoffish at first, warmed up when she realized Victoria was genuinely interested in learning to cook some of the Mexican dishes. But in town, the whispers and mockery continued. Whenever Victoria rode through Hachita, she felt the stares and heard the comments. One Saturday, she stopped at the mercantile for personal supplies and encountered Sarah Mitchell and two other women. "Well, if it is not the Scarecrow," Sarah said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I heard you are working at the Hayes Ranch now. Does Quinn make you stand in the fields to frighten off crows?" The other women laughed, and Victoria felt her face flush. Before she could respond, a deep voice cut through the store. "Mrs. Mitchell, I am surprised to hear such unkindness from someone who claims to be a good Christian woman." Everyone turned. Quinn stood in the doorway, his expression hard. Victoria had not realized he was in town. Sarah's face paled. "Mr. Hayes, I was just having a bit of fun." "At someone else's expense," Quinn said coldly. "Miss Zimmerman works harder and more competently than anyone I have ever hired. She is worth 10 of most people in this town, and I will not tolerate anyone speaking ill of my employees. Is that understood?" The silence in the store was deafening. Sarah nodded mutely, her face now bright red. Quinn walked over to Victoria. "Are you finished here?" he asked, his voice gentler. "Yes," Victoria managed, her heart pounding. "Good, I will walk you out." Outside, Victoria turned to him, emotions swirling in her chest. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did," Quinn said firmly. "Nobody has the right to treat you that way, Victoria. Nobody." It was the first time he had used her given name, and hearing it in his deep voice made something flutter in her chest. She looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw not just an employer but a good man, someone with principles and courage. "Thank you," she said softly. "That meant more than you know." Quinn met her eyes, and for a moment, something passed between them, a connection that went beyond employer and employee. Then he cleared his throat and stepped back. "I will see you Monday," he said. Victoria rode back to her room, her mind racing. That flutter in her chest had not gone away. If anything, it had grown stronger, and she recognized it for what it was, the beginning of something she had never expected to feel. She was developing feelings for Quinton Hayes, and she had no idea what to do about it. The following Monday, Victoria arrived at the ranch to find Quinn in the barn, struggling to move a heavy crate of supplies. Without thinking, she hurried over. "Let me help," she said. Quinn looked skeptical. "Victoria, this is heavy." "I said I was stronger than I look," she reminded him. "Let me prove it." She grabbed one end of the crate, and together they lifted it. It was indeed heavy, but Victoria gritted her teeth and held her end steady as they carried it across the barn to where Quinn wanted it. When they set it down, she was breathing hard but triumphant. Quinn stared at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You really are stronger than you look." "I told you," Victoria said, wiping her hands on her skirt. "I have never been afraid of hard work, and I am tired of people assuming I am fragile just because I am thin." "I am not assuming anything anymore," Quinn said. "You have proven yourself over and over, Victoria. You are one of the most capable people I have ever met." The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "Really? Really?" He hesitated, then added, "Would you like to learn to ride the range with me sometime? I could show you more of the ranch, teach you about the cattle operation. It might be useful for the bookkeeping to understand the full scope of things." Victoria knew it was more than that, could see it in the way he looked at her, but she nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "I would like that very much." The next Saturday, Quinn took her out onto the range. They rode for hours, and he showed her the watering holes, the different pastures where he rotated the cattle. the lined shacks where the hands stayed during roundup. He talked about his plans for the ranch, his hopes to expand the herd and improve the breeding stock. Victoria listened, fascinated not just by the information but by the passion in his voice when he talked about the land. They stopped to rest near a creek, letting the horses drink. Sitting on a flat rock, Victoria felt more at peace than she had in years. The vast openness of the land, the quiet broken only by the wind and the water, the presence of this man who treated her with respect and kindness, it all combined to make her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her parents died. "Why did you come to Hachita?" Quinn asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Victoria told him about her parents' death, about leaving Missouri with nothing but a few dollars and a desperate hope for a fresh start. She told him about the constant mockery, the way people treated her as if being thin was some kind of moral failing or weakness. "I have always been this way," she said, looking down at her slender hands. "No matter how much I eat, I do not gain weight. My mother was the same. It is just how my body is built, but people act like it is something I choose, like I am deliberately trying to look this way. People are cruel when they do not understand something," Quinn said quietly. "I know what that is like." Victoria looked at him questioningly, and he sighed. "My father was a rancher in Texas. He was a hard man, believed that anything worth doing required brute force. I was a scrawny kid, small for my age, not built like he wanted me to be. He thought I was weak, worthless. He told me that every day." "Quinn," Victoria breathed, her heart aching for the boy he must have been. "I grew eventually, filled out, got strong. But by then, I hated him and everything he represented. When I turned 18, I left. Worked on ranches all over Texas and New Mexico, saved every penny I could. When I heard the Carson place was for sale, I bought it with money I earned myself. I built this ranch to prove something to him, even though he has been dead for 3 years now." "You do not have to prove anything to anyone," Victoria said fiercely. "You are a good man, Quinton Hayes. A kind, decent, hard-working man. What your father thought does not matter." Quinn looked at her, and she saw vulnerability in his eyes that made him seem younger, more human. "What you think matters," he said softly. "It matters a great deal to me, Victoria." Her breath caught. The air between them seemed charged with possibility, with all the things they had not yet said. Victoria knew she should be cautious, should protect her heart. But looking at Quinn, seeing the honesty in his face, she could not bring herself to pull away. "I think," she said slowly, "that you are the first person in a very long time who has seen me for who I really am. Not just what I look like, but who I am inside. And I think you are remarkable." Quinn reached out and took her hand, his rough palm warm against hers. "You are strong enough for me, Victoria. You are more than strong enough. You are everything." The words broke something open inside her, some barrier she had built to protect herself from hurt. Victoria felt tears sting her eyes, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I care about you," she whispered. "I know I should not. You are my employer and I am just your bookkeeper, but I cannot help it. I care about you, Quinn." "You are not just my bookkeeper," Quinn said, moving closer. "You have not been for a long time. Victoria, I have been half in love with you since the day you rode up to my ranch and told me you were stronger than you looked. Watching you prove it every single day since has only made me fall harder." "Half in love?" Victoria asked, her heart soaring. "Maybe more than half," Quinn admitted. "Maybe completely. Is that all right with you?" In answer, Victoria leaned forward and kissed him. It was tentative at first, a soft brush of lips, but then Quinn's arm came around her waist and he deepened the kiss. Victoria felt like she was flying, like all the loneliness and hurt of the past years was melting away in the warmth of his embrace. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "Come live at the ranch," he said. "Not in town. There is a spare room in the house. You can stay there and we can see each other every day. I want to court you properly, Victoria. I want everyone to know that you are important to me." "What will people say?" Victoria asked, though she wanted nothing more than to say yes. "I do not care what people say. Do you?" Victoria thought about the whispers, the mockery, the small, cruel world of Hachita. Then she thought about Quinn, about the ranch, about the possibility of a life where she was valued and loved. The choice was easy. "No," she said. "I do not care at all." Victoria moved to the ranch the following week. Quinn gave her a comfortable room with a large window that looked out over the pastures. It was more space than her cramped room above the seamstress shop, and infinitely more welcoming. Maria was delighted to have another woman in the house, and immediately began treating Victoria like a daughter, fussing over her and insisting she eat more. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Victoria had imagined. Quinn was attentive and thoughtful, bringing her wildflowers he found on the range, sitting with her in the evenings while she read aloud from books they both enjoyed, teaching her to handle cattle and rope steers. He never pushed her, never made her feel uncomfortable. Instead, he showed her through countless small actions that she was cherished. The ranch hands noticed the change and approved. Carlos teased them good-naturedly, but there was genuine happiness in his eyes. Even Tom, the most reserved of the hands, told Victoria one day that Quinn seemed lighter, happier than he had ever seen him. But not everyone was pleased. In town, the gossip intensified. People whispered that Victoria had seduced Quinn, that she was taking advantage of him, that she was inappropriate. Sarah Mitchell led the charge of disapproval, spreading rumors that grew more outlandish by the day. One Saturday, when Victoria and Quinn rode into town together for supplies, they encountered a group of townspeople outside the church. Sarah was there with several other women, and she stepped forward as they dismounted. "Mr. Hayes," she said loudly, "I feel it is my Christian duty to warn you that people are talking. Having that woman living at your ranch, unchaperoned, it is not decent. You are ruining her reputation and your own." Quinn's jaw tightened, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "Mrs. Mitchell, Miss Zimmerman lives in my house along with my cook Maria, who is a perfectly acceptable chaperone. Not that it is anyone's business but mine. And I would appreciate it if you and the rest of this town would stop spreading malicious gossip about a good, decent woman who has done nothing to deserve your cruelty." "We are just concerned," Sarah insisted, but her face was red. "No, you are just small-minded," Quinn said flatly. "You judge people by appearances instead of character, and you take pleasure in making others feel bad to make yourselves feel superior. I am done tolerating it, and I am done doing business in a town that treats the woman I love with such disrespect." A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Victoria's heart hammered. Quinn had just declared his love for her publicly in front of everyone. "The woman you love," Sarah repeated faintly. "Yes," Quinn said firmly. He turned to Victoria and took her hand. "I love Victoria Zimmerman. She is the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I have ever met, and I am honored that she cares for me in return. If you cannot accept that, then I will take my business elsewhere. There are other towns, other merchants, but there is only one Victoria." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "I love you too," she said, not caring who heard. "I love you, Quinn." Quinn pulled her into his arms right there on the main street and kissed her soundly. When they broke apart, some of the townspeople looked scandalized, but others were smiling. Victoria saw Mrs. Porter, her former employer, nod approvingly. Even Martha Perkins at the mercantile looked grudgingly impressed. Sarah Mitchell turned and stalked away, but Victoria barely noticed. She was too busy feeling the warmth of Quinn's arms around her, the rightness of being claimed so publicly, so proudly. They finished their business in town and rode back to the ranch together, fingers intertwined on the saddle horn. That evening, sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, Quinn brought up marriage. "I want you to be my wife," he said simply. "I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but I have never been more certain of anything. I want to spend my life with you, Victoria. Will you marry me?" Victoria did not hesitate. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They were wed 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch. The local preacher came out and Carlos, Miguel, Tom, and Maria served as witnesses. Victoria wore a simple white dress that Maria helped her make, and Quinn wore his best suit. It was nothing like the grand weddings that happened in town, but it was perfect for them, intimate and heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her with a tenderness that made Victoria's knees weak. Maria cried happy tears, and the ranch hands cheered. They celebrated with a feast Maria had been preparing for days. And as the sun set, Victoria sat beside her new husband and marveled at how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been alone and mocked, scraping by in a town that despised her. Now she was Victoria Hayes, wife to a good man, co-owner of a thriving ranch, surrounded by people who valued her. It felt like a dream, but the weight of the simple gold band on her finger assured her it was real. The first months of marriage were blissful. Victoria continued to manage the ranch accounts, and she was good at it. Under her careful management, Quinn was able to see exactly where the ranch was profitable and where improvements could be made. They expanded the herd, invested in better breeding stock, and hired 2 more hands to help with the increased work. But more than that, Victoria and Quinn built a life together. They worked side by side during the day, whether in the office or out on the range. Quinn taught her everything about ranching, from reading cattle brands to understanding market prices, and Victoria proved an apt student. In the evenings, they sat together and talked about their dreams for the future, about the family they hoped to have, about growing old together on this land they both loved. The physical side of marriage was a revelation to Victoria. Quinn was gentle and patient, showing her with his body what he told her with words, that she was beautiful and desirable exactly as she was. The first time they made love, he worshipped every inch of her slender frame, telling her she was perfect, that her strength and spirit shone through her body like light through fine porcelain. But life on a ranch was never without challenges. In the spring of 1883, a drought hit the territory hard. The grasses turned brown and brittle, and the creek that ran through the Hayes property slowed to a trickle. Quinn worked from dawn to dusk, moving cattle to where there was still grazing, hauling water from the few reliable wells. Victoria worked alongside him, ignoring the blistering sun and the ache in her muscles. One day, as they were hauling water to a distant pasture, the wagon wheel hit a rock and broke. Quinn cursed, staring at the broken wheel in frustration. They were miles from the ranch and the sun was merciless overhead. "We will have to walk back," he said grimly. "Leave the wagon here and come back with tools to fix it." But Victoria was studying the wheel. "Or we could fix it now. Do you have rope?" "Victoria, it is a broken wheel." "We need to replace the whole thing." "Not necessarily. If we bind it tightly enough, we can reinforce it enough to get the wagon back to the ranch. Then we can do a proper repair." Quinn looked skeptical, but he retrieved rope from the wagon. Together, they worked to bind the broken wheel, Victoria's clever fingers finding ways to distribute the pressure and create a temporary fix. It took over an hour in the brutal heat, both of them sweating and exhausted, but finally they had something that might hold. "Let us try it," Victoria said. They loaded the water barrels carefully, distributing the weight. Quinn drove slowly, expecting the wheel to give way any moment, but Victoria's repair held. They made it back to the ranch, and Quinn looked at his wife with undisguised admiration. "You are brilliant," he said. "Do you know that?" "Absolutely brilliant." Victoria smiled, wiping sweat from her face. "I just do not give up easily." "Neither do I," Quinn said, pulling her into his arms despite the heat and the dirt. "And I am the luckiest man alive that you chose me." The drought finally broke in late summer with storms that rolled across the desert like heaven's own fury. The ranch survived, though some of their neighbors were not so fortunate. Quinn and Victoria helped where they could, offering grazing land to those who had lost their pastures, extending credit at the general store they now partly owned after investing in the business. Their generosity was noted, and slowly, the attitude in Hachita began to shift. It helped that Victoria proved herself time and again. When a flu epidemic hit the town that fall, she volunteered to help nurse the sick, working tirelessly alongside the doctor. When the school needed someone to teach reading and writing after the teacher moved away, Victoria volunteered twice a week. She was competent, kind, and endlessly hardworking, and even the most skeptical townspeople had to admit that Quinton Hayes had chosen well. Sarah Mitchell never quite warmed to Victoria, but even she stopped spreading malicious gossip after her husband's business nearly failed, and Quinn extended him a loan that kept them afloat. Pride kept Sarah from thanking Victoria directly, but the hostility disappeared, replaced by grudging acceptance. In the spring of 1884, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. She told Quinn one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. For a moment he just stared at her, and then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Victoria said, laughing as he swept her up in his arms and spun her around. "Quinn, put me down." "You will make me dizzy." He set her down gently, his hands going to her still flat stomach. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. Victoria, this is the best news I have ever had." But joy quickly gave way to worry. That night, lying in bed with Quinn's hand on her stomach, Victoria voiced the fear that had been growing since she realized she was pregnant. "What if I am too thin to carry a baby safely?" she whispered. "What if I am not strong enough?" Quinn propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her seriously. "You are the strongest person I know. Your body has never failed you, Victoria. Why would it fail you now? People say that thin women have difficult births. What if something goes wrong?" "Then we will deal with it together," Quinn said firmly. "But I have seen you haul water in a drought, mend a broken wagon wheel in the desert sun, work 16-hour days during roundup without complaint. Your body is strong and capable, and I believe it will do what it needs to do. But more than that, I believe in you. I always have." His words soothed her fear, though it never quite went away. As her pregnancy progressed, Victoria continued to work, though Quinn and Maria both fussed over her constantly. She felt well, better than she had expected, though the baby made her tired and her appetite increased dramatically. "Finally," Maria said with satisfaction, watching Victoria eat a third helping at dinner. "Finally, you eat like you should." Victoria laughed, rubbing her growing stomach. "The baby has opinions about food, apparently." She continued to manage the ranch accounts throughout the pregnancy, working right up until the last week. The baby was due in late November, and as the days grew shorter and cooler, Victoria grew more nervous, but she also grew more confident. Her body, which had been mocked and dismissed her whole life, was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. She was creating life, and that filled her with a fierce pride. The baby came on a cold November night with Maria and the local midwife attending. It was a long labor, hard and painful, and there were moments when Victoria wondered if her fears had been justified. But Quinn held her hand through it all, whispering encouragement, telling her she was strong enough, she could do this. And she did. At dawn, as the first light broke over the New Mexico desert, Victoria gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When the midwife placed the squirming, red-faced infant in her arms, Victoria wept with relief and joy. Quinn leaned over them both, tears streaming down his face as well. "He is perfect," Quinn said in awe. "Victoria, you did it. He is perfect." They named him Thomas Quinton Hayes after Quinn's grandfather, the one man in his family who had been kind to him. Little Thomas was a lusty baby with his father's gray eyes and a surprisingly loud cry for someone so small. Victoria took to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else, though she was grateful for Maria's help and advice. Quinn was a devoted father from the start. He would spend hours just holding Thomas, talking to him in a soft voice, showing him around the ranch even though the baby was too young to understand. Watching her husband with their son, Victoria fell in love with him all over again. The first year of Thomas's life was challenging but joyful. The ranch continued to prosper, and Victoria managed to balance motherhood with her work, though she hired a young woman from town to help with the bookkeeping a few days a week. The girl, Anna, was quiet and capable, grateful for the work and eager to learn. Victoria enjoyed teaching her, passing on the skills her own father had taught her. In the summer of 1885, when Thomas was 9 months old, Victoria discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news filled her with excitement rather than fear. Her body had proven itself capable, and she felt confident about the second pregnancy in a way she had not about the first. "Another baby," Quinn said, shaking his head in wonder. "Our family is growing." "Are you happy?" Victoria asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Quinn said. "You have given me everything I never knew I wanted, Victoria. A home, a family, a reason to build something lasting. I love you more than I can say." The second pregnancy was easier than the first, or perhaps Victoria was just more experienced. She worked through most of it, only stopping in the last few weeks. In early April 1886, she gave birth to a daughter, a tiny perfect girl with dark hair and green eyes that looked just like Victoria's. They named her Grace Maria Hayes, after Quinn's kind grandfather and the woman who had become like a mother to them both. Maria wept when they told her, holding the baby with reverent care. Thomas, now walking and full of energy, was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to see her and touch her gently. With 2 children, life at the ranch became busier but also fuller. Victoria and Quinn worked as a team, supporting each other through sleepless nights and challenging days. The ranch continued to thrive, and they were able to build an addition to the house, giving the children their own rooms and creating more space for their growing family. The town of Hachita had changed too. The arrival of the railroad in 1886 brought new people and new opportunities. The place grew from a small, dusty settlement into a proper town with a school, a church, several stores, and even a small hotel. Victoria served on the school board and helped organize a ladies' aid society that provided assistance to families in need. She was respected now, valued for her intelligence and kindness rather than judged for her appearance. Sarah Mitchell eventually moved away, following her husband to a new opportunity in California. Before she left, she sought out Victoria one last time. The two women stood awkwardly in the Hayes ranch yard, years of hostility between them. "I was wrong about you," Sarah said finally. "I judged you unfairly, and I am sorry for that." Victoria was surprised but gracious. "Thank you for saying that. I know it was not easy." "You have built a good life here," Sarah said, looking around at the prosperous ranch, at Thomas playing in the yard and Grace sleeping in Maria's arms on the porch. "You have a family, respect, success. You proved everyone wrong." "I did not do it to prove anyone wrong," Victoria said quietly. "I did it because it was the life I wanted. But I forgive you, Sarah. I hope you find happiness in California." Sarah nodded, her eyes bright, and then she was gone. Victoria felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a final release of the old hurts and resentments. The years that followed were full and rich. Thomas grew into a strong, curious boy who loved the ranch and spent every moment he could with his father, learning about cattle and horses and the land. Grace was quieter but equally determined, with her mother's head for numbers and her father's steady nature. In 1888, Victoria gave birth to a third child, another boy they named Samuel, who was cheerful and easygoing from the start. Quinn expanded the ranch, buying adjacent properties as they became available, until the Hayes Ranch was one of the largest in the territory. But success did not change him. He remained hardworking and fair, treating his employees with respect and investing in the community. Together, he and Victoria built something that would last, a legacy for their children and grandchildren. One evening in the summer of 1890, Victoria and Quinn sat on their porch watching the sun set. Thomas, now 6, was helping Miguel with the horses. Grace, 4, was helping Maria shell peas for dinner. Baby Samuel was asleep in his cradle and the ranch was peaceful in the golden light. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Quinn asked, his arm around Victoria's shoulders. "Sometimes," Victoria admitted. "If you had not given me a chance that day, if you had judged me the way everyone else did, I do not know where I would be now. I would have missed out on the best thing that ever happened to me," Quinn said. "The moment you rode up to my ranch and told me you were stronger than you looked, I knew you were special. Watching you prove it every single day since has been the greatest privilege of my life." Victoria leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "You gave me more than a job that day, Quinn. You gave me a home, a family, a place to belong. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else." "You were never invisible," Quinn said softly. "You were just surrounded by blind people, but I saw you, Victoria. I saw your strength, your spirit, your beautiful soul, and I fell in love with everything you are." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. In the distance, cattle lowed softly, and the warm breeze carried the scent of sage and dust. This was their life, built from nothing but hard work, love, and faith in each other. "I love you," Victoria said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she said them. "I will love you until the day I die, Quinn Hayes." "And I will love you beyond that," Quinn replied, kissing her forehead. "In this life and whatever comes after." As the years rolled on, the Hayes family became an integral part of Hachita's history. Quinn served as mayor for 2 terms, bringing progress and prosperity to the town while maintaining its character. Victoria continued to manage the ranch finances and became known throughout the territory for her business acumen. More than once, other ranchers sought her advice, and she was always generous with her knowledge. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the ranch operations as he matured. He had his father's capability and his mother's intelligence, and by the time he was 18, he was running much of the day-to-day work. Grace showed no interest in ranching but excelled at school, and Victoria and Quinn supported her dreams of becoming a teacher. Samuel, the youngest, was still finding his way, but he had a gift with horses that suggested he might become a trainer. In 1895, when Victoria was 33 and Quinn 37, they celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary. The ranch was more successful than ever, their children were healthy and happy, and they had built a community of friends and extended family around them. Maria, now in her 60s, still cooked for them, though she had help from a young woman she was training. Carlos had married and built a house on ranch property with his wife and growing family. The Hayes Ranch was not just a business but a home for many people. That anniversary evening, Quinn surprised Victoria with a trip to Santa Fe, just the two of them. They had rarely been away from the ranch together, and it felt like an adventure. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate in restaurants, and attended a concert at the newly built Opera House. For a few days, they were not ranchers with responsibilities but simply a couple in love, enjoying each other's company. On their last night in Santa Fe, as they walked through the plaza under a sky full of stars, Quinn stopped and turned to Victoria. "I want you to know something," he said seriously. "These 12 years with you have been the happiest of my life. Every day I wake up grateful that you walked into my life, that you gave me a chance despite having every reason not to trust anyone. You made me a better man, Victoria. You made me believe in love and family and building something meaningful. I could not have done any of this without you." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "We did it together, Quinn. Everything we have, everything we have built, we did it as partners. You gave me a place to be strong, a place where my strength was valued instead of mocked. You made me believe I was enough exactly as I am." "You were always enough," Quinn said, cupping her face in his hands. "You were always more than enough. You were everything." They kissed under the stars, and Victoria felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt all those years ago by the creek. Being with Quinn still felt like coming home, still felt like the safest, most right thing in the world. The turn of the century brought changes to the territory. New Mexico was moving toward statehood, and modern conveniences were slowly making their way even to remote places like Hachita. The railroad brought easier access to markets, and the telegraph connected them to the wider world. But some things remained constant, including the love between Quinn and Victoria Hayes. By 1902, Thomas was courting a young woman from a neighboring ranch, a capable girl named Elizabeth, who reminded Victoria of herself at that age. Grace was teaching at the school in Hachita, beloved by her students. Samuel, at 14, was becoming known as the best horse trainer in the territory. The ranch continued to prosper, and Quinn and Victoria, now in their 40s, had earned the respect and admiration of everyone who knew them. One afternoon, Victoria was working in the office when Anna, who still helped with the books even though she was now married with children of her own, came in with a visitor. It was a young woman, painfully thin with haunted eyes and worn clothes. She looked terrified but determined. "Mrs. Hayes," Anna said gently. "This is Clara. She just arrived in town and is looking for work. I thought you might be able to help her." Victoria looked at the girl and saw herself 15 years earlier, desperate for a chance, for someone to see past appearances to the person underneath. She smiled warmly. "Clara, it is nice to meet you. Please sit down. Tell me about yourself." The girl sat hesitantly, twisting her hands in her lap. "I can read and write, madam. I can do numbers. I worked at a store back in Kansas, but the owner died and his son closed the business. I came west hoping to find work, but everyone just looks at me and laughs. They say I am too skinny, too weak. But I am not, madam. I am strong. I can work hard." Victoria's heart ached with recognition. "I believe you," she said firmly. And as it happens, I need someone to help in the office a few days a week. Anna is training her daughter to take over her position, and we need another person. The pay is fair, and there is a room available in town if you need it. Would you be interested?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You would hire me, just like that?" "I know what it is like to be judged by appearances," Victoria said gently. "I know what it is like to have people dismiss you without giving you a chance. Someone gave me a chance once, and it changed my life. Now I am passing that forward." "So yes, Clara, I am hiring you. When can you start?" "Right now," Clara said eagerly. "I can start right now." Victoria smiled and began explaining the work, watching the girl's face light up with hope and gratitude. Later that evening, she told Quinn about it, and he pulled her close. "You are going to change that girl's life," he said. "Someone changed mine," Victoria replied. "The least I can do is pay it forward," and she did. Clara proved to be an excellent worker, quick and reliable. Within a year, she was managing much of the bookkeeping herself, freeing Victoria to focus on other aspects of the ranch. Clara also met and married one of the ranch hands, a kind young man who looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Victoria stood up with her at the wedding, feeling like a proud mother. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1905, and the entire community mourned her. She had been a constant presence in the Hayes household, a second mother to their children and a dear friend to Victoria. They buried her in the small cemetery on the ranch, under a cottonwood tree she had loved. Thomas married Elizabeth in a beautiful ceremony, and within 2 years, Victoria and Quinn became grandparents. Holding Thomas's son in her arms, Victoria marveled at the passage of time and the continuity of family. Grace married a schoolteacher from Silver City and moved away, though she visited often. Samuel stayed at the ranch, taking over the horse breeding program and expanding it into a profitable sideline business. By 1910, Quinn and Victoria were in their late 40s, their hair showing threads of silver, their faces lined by years of sun and work and laughter. But their love had only deepened with time. They still worked side by side, still sat together on the porch in the evenings, still looked at each other with the same affection and respect that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. One evening, as they watched their grandchildren play in the yard, Thomas and Elizabeth's 3 children running and shouting with the boundless energy of youth, Victoria leaned against Quinn. "We did well, did we not?" she said softly. "We did better than well," Quinn replied. "We built something beautiful, Victoria, not just the ranch, but a family, a community, a life full of love and purpose. I am so proud of what we have created together." "I am proud too," Victoria said, "and I am grateful. Grateful that you saw me when others did not, grateful that you gave me a chance, grateful for every single day I have spent as your wife." Quinn kissed her temple, a gesture so familiar and tender that it made Victoria's heart swell. "I am the one who should be grateful. You were brave enough to take a chance on me, on this life. You were strong enough to face down everyone who doubted you. You were loving enough to build a family with me. Everything good in my life comes from you, Victoria Hayes." As the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple, Victoria and Quinn sat together in the comfortable silence of 2 people who knew each other completely. Around them, their family gathered, their children and grandchildren, the ranch hands who had become like family, the friends and neighbors who had shared their journey. This was the life they had built, starting from that day when a thin young woman rode up to a ranch and asked for a chance, and a rancher said, "You are strong enough for me." It was a life built on love and respect, on hard work and determination, on seeing past appearances to the strength underneath. It was a life that had weathered droughts and hardships, gossip and judgment, and emerged stronger for it. Years continued to unfold with the gentle rhythm of ranch life. In 1912, New Mexico finally achieved statehood, and Quinn and Victoria attended the celebrations in Santa Fe. Standing in the crowd, watching the flag raised, Victoria thought about how much had changed since she first arrived in this territory 30 years earlier. She had been alone, broke, and mocked. Now she stood beside a man who loved her, surrounded by children and grandchildren, secure in a life she and Quinn had built with their own hands. They returned to Hachita to find their ranch thriving under Thomas's management. Their eldest son had inherited both his parents' best qualities and was making innovations of his own, crossbreeding cattle for better meat yield and experimenting with different grazing patterns. Quinn stepped back more and more, content to let the next generation take over while he enjoyed his grandchildren and the slower pace of semi-retirement. Victoria, too, reduced her workload, turning over most of the bookkeeping to Clara, who had become a trusted friend as well as employee. But Victoria still kept her hand in, still reviewed the accounts and offered advice when asked. She also became more involved in community work, helping to establish a library in Hachita and supporting efforts to improve the school. In 1915, Grace returned home with her husband and 2 daughters. Her husband had been offered a position as principal of the Hachita school, and Grace would teach there as well. Having their daughter back was a joy for both Victoria and Quinn, and the house filled with laughter again as their grandchildren played together. Samuel, now in his late 20s, surprised everyone by falling in love with a widow from Silver City who had a young son. They married quietly and settled into a house on the ranch property, Samuel's skill with horses providing a good living while his wife worked alongside Victoria on community projects. The Hayes Ranch had truly become a family compound, multiple generations living and working together in harmony. As Victoria entered her 50s, she noticed changes in her body. The slenderness that had caused so much mockery in her youth had become, ironically, fashionable among younger women. But Victoria found she no longer cared about such things. Her body had served her well, bearing 3 children, working alongside her husband for decades, remaining strong and healthy even as age began to slow her down. Quinn aged too, his dark hair going fully silver, his face deeply lined by years of sun and wind. But to Victoria, he was as handsome as ever, perhaps more so. The young rancher who had given her a chance had become a patriarch, respected throughout the state, sought out for his wisdom and experience. Yet he remained the same man at heart, kind and fair, devoted to his family, and still deeply in love with his wife. In the spring of 1918, as the world convulsed with war, the Hayes family gathered for Quinn and Victoria's 35th wedding anniversary. Thomas and Elizabeth came with their 4 children, Grace and her family, Samuel and his wife and son, all of them filling the house with noise and joy. Friends and neighbors joined them for a celebration that lasted all day, a testament to the regard in which the Hayes family was held. As evening fell and the guests departed, Quinn and Victoria found themselves alone on the porch, the place where they had spent so many evenings over the years. Quinn took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long familiarity. 35 years, he said wonderingly. It seems like yesterday that you rode up to my ranch and also like a lifetime ago. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Victoria said. Time is strange that way. The years have passed so quickly, but we have lived so much life in them. Would you change anything? Quinn asked. If you could go back, Would you do anything differently? Victoria considered this seriously. I would have liked to spare myself some of the pain, the mockery and loneliness before I met you. But those experiences made me who I am, gave me empathy for others who struggle. So no, I do not think I would change anything. Every moment, good and bad, led me to you and to this life. I am content with that. I am content too, Quinn said. More than content, I am grateful every single day for the gift of your love. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable in each other's presence. Then Victoria said, "Do you remember what you said to me that day, when I asked about the job and you wondered if I could handle the physical work?" "I said you needed to be strong enough," Quinn replied. "And I said I was stronger than I looked. And then later, much later, you said I was strong enough for you. Do you remember?" "I remember every word I have ever said to you," Quinn said softly. "But especially those, because you were strong enough, Victoria. You were strong enough for the ranch, for me, for motherhood, for everything life threw at us. Your strength has been the foundation of our family." "Our strength," Victoria corrected gently. "We were strong together, Quinn. That is what made it work. Alone, we each had our capabilities. But together, we were unstoppable." Quinn raised her hand to his lips and kissed it, a courtly gesture he had never outgrown. "Together," he agreed. "Always together." The 1920s brought more changes. The automobile became common even in remote New Mexico, and roads improved. The ranch got telephone service and later, electricity. The world was speeding up, becoming more connected, and even Hachita could not remain isolated from progress. But through it all, the Hayes Ranch remained a constant. The cattle still grazed the pastures, the horses still ran in the corrals, and the family still gathered for Sunday dinners. Thomas's children grew into capable young adults, ready to take over the ranch when their time came. Grace's daughters excelled in school, and Samuel's stepson showed a gift for training horses that matched his stepfather's. Victoria and Quinn, now in their 60s, had truly stepped back from daily operations. They spent their days reading, tending a small garden Victoria had planted, and enjoying their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They took walks around the ranch each evening, moving slower than they once had, but still together, still content in each other's company. In 1928, Hachita held a celebration for Quinn and Victoria's 45th wedding anniversary. It was a grand affair, with people coming from all over the state to honor them. The governor sent a letter praising their contributions to New Mexico. Former ranch hands, now scattered across the West, sent telegrams and letters. Clara, still working at the ranch despite her own advancing years, organized the whole event with help from the Hayes children. Standing before the crowd, Quinn gave a short speech. 45 years ago, a brave young woman rode up to my ranch looking for work. She was thin as a rail, and I knew people had judged her harshly for it. But I saw something in her eyes, a strength and determination that had nothing to do with physical size. So I gave her a job, and she gave me everything. She gave me love, a family, a purpose, a life worth living. Victoria Hayes is the strongest person I have ever known, and I am honored that she chose to spend her life with me." Victoria stood beside him, tears streaming down her face as the crowd applauded. Then it was her turn to speak. "When I came to Hachita, I was alone and frightened, mocked for my appearance, desperate for someone to see past the surface to who I really was. Quinton Hayes did that. He gave me not just a job, but a chance to prove myself. He looked at me and said I was strong enough, and in doing so, he gave me the confidence to believe it myself. Every good thing in my life, every joy, every accomplishment, comes from the foundation he helped me build. I love him more today than I did 45 years ago, and I will love him until my last breath." The celebration continued late into the night, filled with music and laughter and the warmth of community. As Victoria and Quinn finally retired to their room, exhausted but happy, they held each other close. "That was quite a day," Quinn said. "It was perfect," Victoria agreed. "Though I am glad it is over. I am too old for so much excitement," Quinn chuckled. "We are not that old. We still have plenty of life left to live together." And they did. The years continued to unfold gently. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1933, a quieter affair with just family. By then, they had 7 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren, with more on the way. The Hayes Ranch had expanded to over 2,000 acres, one of the most successful operations in southern New Mexico. Victoria's health remained good, though she moved more slowly and tired more easily. Quinn had developed arthritis that made riding difficult, but he still walked the ranch each day, checking on things with a critical eye. They had hired a nurse to help them with daily tasks, a young woman named Ruth, who quickly became part of the family. In the summer of 1935, on a hot August day, Victoria woke feeling particularly tired. She and Quinn had planned to sit in the garden, but she found she lacked the energy. Quinn fussed over her, insisting she rest, bringing her cool water and reading to her from the newspaper. "I am fine," Victoria protested. "Just tired. It is too hot." But as the day wore on, she felt weaker. By evening, Quinn had sent for the doctor. The examination was thorough and the doctor's face was grave when he finished. "Her heart is weak," he told Quinn and the assembled family. "At her age, there is not much we can do except keep her comfortable." Quinn's face went pale, but he nodded. "She will have whatever she needs, whatever she wants." Victoria drifted in and out of consciousness over the next few days. Her children and grandchildren came to say goodbye, though she insisted she was not dying, just resting. But deep down, she knew. Her body, which had served her so faithfully for 73 years, was finally giving out. On the 4th day, she woke in the evening to find Quinn sitting beside her bed, holding her hand. The room was quiet, the lights soft and golden from the setting sun. "Hello, my love," she said softly. "Hello," Quinn replied, his voice rough with unshed tears. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Victoria admitted. "But not afraid. I've lived a good life, Quinn, a wonderful life because of you. Because of us," Quinn corrected, echoing her words from years ago. "We built this life together, Victoria. Everything good in it we created together." "I love you," Victoria said. "I need you to know that. I have loved you from the moment you said I was strong enough. You made me believe in myself, and that changed everything." "I love you too," Quinn said, tears finally spilling down his weathered cheeks. "You are the love of my life, Victoria Hayes. You always have been, you always will be." They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the sun set through the window. Victoria felt at peace. She had lived a full, rich life. She had loved and been loved. She had raised children and built a legacy. She had proven that strength came in many forms, that being thin did not mean being weak, that determination and courage mattered more than appearance. As the last light faded, Victoria felt her grip on Quinn's hand loosening. She tried to hold on, but her strength was finally, truly, spent. "Quinn," she whispered. "I am here," he said. "I am right here, my love, strong enough," Victoria murmured. "I was strong enough." "You were always strong enough," Quinn said, his voice breaking. "You were more than strong enough. You were everything." Victoria smiled, and then, with her husband holding her hand and her family surrounding her, she slipped peacefully away. The funeral was held 3 days later, and it seemed like half the state came to pay their respects. Victoria Hayes, the thin young woman who had once been mocked and dismissed, was mourned by hundreds. People spoke of her kindness, her intelligence, her strength, her generosity. They told stories of how she had helped them, given them chances, changed their lives. Quinn stood by her grave, Thomas supporting him on one side and Samuel on the other, and listened to the tributes. He was proud of her, of the legacy she had left, but his heart was broken. After 52 years together, he felt hollowed out, incomplete. He lived for another 2 years, tending the ranch with Thomas, playing with his great-grandchildren, sitting alone on the porch each evening watching the sunset. The family worried about him, saw how much he missed her, but Quinn bore his grief with dignity. In the spring of 1937, Quinn suffered a heart attack while checking on the spring calves. Thomas found him lying in the grass, a peaceful expression on his face. The doctor said he had died instantly, without pain. They buried him beside Victoria under the cottonwood trees in the ranch cemetery. At the funeral, Thomas read a letter his father had left for the family. "I have lived a good long life, far better than I had any right to expect. The best part of it, the part that mattered most, was the 52 years I spent with your mother. She made me a better man. She gave me a family, a purpose, a legacy. She was the strongest, bravest, most loving person I ever knew, and I was privileged beyond measure to be her husband. I go now to join her, content in the knowledge that we built something lasting together. Take care of the ranch, but more importantly, take care of each other. Love each other as fiercely as your mother and I loved each other, and you will have lived well." There was not a dry eye in the crowd. The story of Quinn and Victoria Hayes became legend in New Mexico, told and retold across generations. The thin woman who had been mocked and the rancher who saw past appearances to the strength beneath, who built an empire together and loved each other until death. The ranch remained in the Hayes family, passed down through Thomas to his children and their children after them. Through droughts and depressions, wars and changing times, it endured, a testament to the foundation Quinn and Victoria had built. The house was preserved, turned eventually into a museum that told their story. And in Hachita, New Mexico, where it all began, people still talk about the love story of Quinn and Victoria Hayes. They talk about the importance of looking past surfaces, of giving people chances, of recognizing that strength comes in many forms. They remember the woman who was laughed at for being too thin and the rancher who said, "You are strong enough for me," and proved that love, respect, and partnership could overcome any obstacle. Their grave became a place of pilgrimage for couples, a reminder that true love sees the soul, not just the body. Fresh flowers appeared there regularly, left by people who had been inspired by their story. And on quiet evenings, ranch hands swore they could sometimes see two figures walking together near the cottonwoods, hand in hand, still together even in death as they had been in life. The legacy of Quinn and Victoria Hayes lived on not just in their descendants, but in the values they embodied. The ranch continued to be a place where people were judged by their character and capability, not their appearance. Clara's story, so similar to Victoria's, became part of the family lore, an example of paying forward the kindness they had received. In later years, when Thomas's granddaughter wrote a book about the family history, she titled it "Strong Enough." It became a bestseller, inspiring countless readers with its message that strength comes from within, that love sees beyond the surface, that giving someone a chance can change not just their life but generations to come. The story of Victoria Zimmerman Hayes and Quinton Hayes became more than just history. It became a testament to the transformative power of love, the importance of looking deeper than appearances, and the truth that being strong enough is not about physical size but about courage, determination, and heart. It was a reminder that in the wild, harsh landscape of the American West, the greatest strength was the strength to love, to believe, to build something lasting with another person. And so, the story ended not with sadness but with celebration, a legacy of love that continued to inspire and guide, a reminder that the best stories, the ones that truly matter, are about people who see each other truly, who support each other completely, and who build something beautiful together that outlasts them both.